Is this the English office or the American office?
English. We don't have an American office anymore.
No. You the office, you said.
Oh, the office.
Oh dear.
Mr. Brent, I do apologise.
I should think so. Thank God it's not a visual podcast. Oh, that would be an embarrassment. Gary can't dance. It's very evident. Why? Because he just tried. He can't even do the worst dance in the world on television ever. Welcome to the Graphters Podcast.
Right, well, hello, Gary.
Hello, John. How are you doing, my good man?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And you yourself?
I'm not doing too badly at all. This is currently Thursday the 20th of January. And
lockdown's over. Lockdown's over.
It would appear to be, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no masks.
Well, no masks, not immediately. I think we've got a little bit longer with masks, haven't we? But like a week or so or something.
I don't know.
Well, when I went to
the party's already started, hasn't it? So,
well, the garden party's already started. Well, I'm going to stop doing that now.
It's a works do.
I'm not going to. Apparently, there was no social distancing. How are you doing, chap?
It's been a good start to the year, actually. Yeah. It's the job's purring back into full swing. Yeah. People are, obviously very busy in academic land.
I can imagine.
There's been lots of issues with the restrictions, with staffing, with student confidence in coming in, but that's the world at the moment. So we'll move on from that. But they've been doing brilliant jobs, and Ofsted have restarted their visits for universities, colleges, and schools. So lots of my friends have been preparing for that or going through that, which is, I must say, I'm not envious this year. That's one thing I'm not going to miss is the audit.
No. Yeah. Yes, I must admit what was that like? I mean, as I say, I've never had to get involved in that effort with the education. So what is it when obviously it's like, what's it called? I always want to call it tertiary education, but my children always go to me, that's not a word. No, it is. It's after secondary education. It's higher. It's college. Right.
Further.
Further ed. Yeah.
Secondary, primary, secondary, further, and higher.
Yeah.
So I mean, Ofsted visits have evolved. Certainly in the 15 years I was doing it, when I first I went through 3 Ofsted visits in my time at the college, and they're all a sort of they're a bit of a blur when you're a tutor, because you're doing your job, it doesn't stop. You've just got to make sure that the paperwork is current and up to date at the point of being in a classroom, which I'm not saying is not always the case, but sometimes you might let that slip. Especially when you've got busy year groups and things. When you're a middle manager, obviously you're the meat in the sandwich, as they say, and you're trying to make sure that all of your staff are compliant with the processes that the college has got in place. So all the protocols and processes, and then you're collating data for the senior leadership teams, and then when you're in senior leadership teams, you're the ones that sit in front of them. So,
yes, I suppose.
So it's an interesting, but as I say, it's evolved. And Ofsted now, when they go into colleges and when they don't go into universities. It's a different method in universities, but in colleges, when they go in, they track the learner journey. So they'll go straight to source, find a learner, have a chat with that learner, and then they'll start to data mine backwards. So they'll ask the learner what course they're on. What do they know the timetables? How are they progressing within their course? How do they feel? Are they safe at college? Those sort of things. Have they made friends? What's the career aspirations? All these then create data points that are then checked to see if college systems match that data. So every college system runs a different mechanism to track a learner,
So they have to do it in a different direction in order to make sure they're getting what they need.
Yeah, and to make sure. So
makes sense.
if a student says, well, I've had a few issues with this, that, and the other, those issues better be recorded, and there better be actions against those issues
Got you.
and support in place. So and that's what you would expect. That's good customer service. That's fantastic customer service.
You can't beat a bit of good customer service.
Yeah, and I think educators do wince when senior leaders call students customers, but what are they if they're nothing but customers? I mean, they make a choice to continue in further education. They could take another route.
Yeah, it's
So
not
it's
paid for though, is it? It's still paid for by the government.
The learner has access to funding for education up to a level 3.
Yes, which is
Where they choose to do that is up to them.
right.
So if you've got multiple colleges in your area, you can
Yes.
choose to go to one of those colleges. So in that respect, I think that's how I would call them a customer.
That's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I was on to a college today talking to some staff, and we were talking about they only get 12 hours of teaching time on a full-time course per week. So 12 hours of teaching time per week.
Is that what per course or full stop?
Per course, yeah. They're
Right.
only allowed one course. They can't do multiple courses.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, but if they go to A levels, then the timetables are a much fuller
Sure.
experience. So
yeah.
yeah, it does. There's something there that needs to be addressed, and the colleges I think need to be funded better to make sure students have access to more education. But anyway, there we go. Off my soapbox. What's been happening in Gary's world?
Hang on, just 1 second. I've just been sent a message by work.
Hey.
Unbelievably, at
The
8 in
the timing
evening.
of that is epic.
It is, isn't it? Do you know what? I'm not even going to read it. No, work's been great. We have been basically, we've been so full of work. We managed to have a nice Christmas break, which I think I mentioned before, and at the moment I am doing look development for work again, as always, that I can't talk about. As I say, I had a cold which basically almost knocked me sideways, and as a consequence,
And you're fat. Yeah. So,
thank you.
but that's what you said. You said you were on
I
a
did
diet.
say, yes, I said yes. Well, I'm not put too fine a point on it. Yes, I'm probably about 1.5 stone heavier than I should be.
I think equally. I think if we sat on the scales, we'd equal each other out, in the sense that
You mean if you were on one side of the seesaw and I was on the other?
No, if our weight gains over Christmas, I think I'm equal on that. I think.
Well, yeah, possibly. I think, but and also, I mean, I've reached a point where I've got to be a little bit more careful.
Yeah, well, Marie put me on salads today, so there we go.
Did she? Oh, right. Well,
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate because I make all of our bread, so I'm able to keep an even stronger check on all the stuff, so I know what goes in it.
Gluten free.
No, because gluten-free bread, as a rule, tends to you put a knife on it to spread butter, and it goes it just dissolves. So it's I'm not a big fan of gluten-free bread. Gluten-free bread requires somebody to work out a better method of baking it, to put quite simply. But no. So and we also, I'll tell you what we have been doing. Again, not a sponsor, but we've been doing Gusto for a while.
Oh.
I may have mentioned this. I'm not sure. And so we get, totally off topic, of course, to do with TV and games or whatever. But we get boxes 4 days a week. Well, we get one box for 4 days a week of food for the evening meal. And then we just fend lightly during the day. And then on Friday, we normally have a takeaway. Sounds a bit, just because there's so many wonderful choices of takeaway around here, it's like, we want to keep all the local businesses going as much as we can. So it's a small amount of our money goes towards a takeaway on a Friday for the four of us. And I think, but the Gusto is great. We've had some amazing meals. In fact, this evening we had, it was roasted ratatouille with fusiglione and
Fusiglione.
baked. Fusiglione, yeah.
Fusiglione.
baked, which is basically it's just small fusilli. But it had aubergine in there, and it didn't have capers, but it should have had. But it had it was made of goat's cheese, but we did it with feta. So we've everything that arrived in the box we used apart from the goat's cheese, basically. And no,
it's because I don't like goat's cheese either.
No, I'm not a big fan of goat's cheese.
Not a big fan.
But no, the food has just been amazing, and we're mostly vegetarian in the house. So we have basically just vegan and vegetarian meals from Gusto, and the quality has been just fabulous. One does not simply cook Gusto food. It is just it's honestly it's been
just on that because you allude there to a brand that is Mr. Spencer's. We started buying the fresh produce from butchers and greengrocers now.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, we've gone local, and it's you do pay a bit more, but you get better flavour.
Yes, absolutely, particularly with your meat.
Yeah, better flavour. So they wouldn't be listening, but big shout out to the local butchers there. But anyway,
Johnny Butchers, there you go.
So points for tonight.
Yes.
We wanted to talk about the recent news of BBC licence fees tonight.
Lots of recent news, but yes, that's one in particular that I really want to talk about this because obviously the argument is it shouldn't be a paid-for service, and it's an archaic system. They should be following a system sort of almost like Netflix or HBO, where people pay a licence fee, as we do.
Monthly or something,
well, which is kind of what most people do anyway with their TV license anyway.
Yeah,
and the idea is that it shouldn't go any higher, and it should be this set price, same as everything else is out there, and that then they will have a different model to pay for all the stuff that BBC do. Only problem is the BBC do all that stuff because it's part of the charter. Now, the moment you take away the charter and that they will probably stop doing half the things that they do. What we get if you go to an HBO model or a Netflix model, or more of an HBO model maybe, is probably a better example. Is you will get repeat shows during early parts of the week. You'll get probably a couple of brand new dramas that will be like huge amounts of budget that take up that are then repeated later on in the week, and then you'll also get like a bunch, say maybe a day when you get a lot of films. That's what happens with HBO. Whereas with the BBC, with our license fee, which is not a massive amount of money at all, we get BBC One, BBC Two, BBC Three, which is coming back on as a linear channel rather than a digital one. We get radios 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4 extra. You know, there's a wealth of programming which is around the country, which is locational. So you've got like BBC Wales, BBC Scotland still, and
World Service,
the BBC News website. All of this will basically vanish if people stop paying the license fee. But the big problem for me in terms of industry is that there will be basically, and I worry specifically for people who do VFX in the UK. So it is relevant. It's very, very relevant. Is that if you have this budget which has to be geared towards getting bums on seats, that people will basically, there won't be as many dramas as there currently is. There just won't be. There'll be a couple of really big ones, but there won't be like 4 or 5, 6 episodes that you get. Well, I mean, basically BBC generates so much drama, and the visual effects that go into those shows are a lot of the stuff that is stuff you don't see. I mean, there's a show that we're currently working on.
It costs a lot of money.
It can cost a lot of money, yes. But it's like bread and butter jobs. It's constant work that flows through. I mean, pretty much everything we did was a drama last year.
I don't understand what the problem is with the license fee. I mean, it's £159 for the TV license fee.
Yep.
It's £13.99 for Netflix.
For how many? It's not that much, is it?
It is if you want to have it multi-screen for like your household, for instance. You know, if you've got kids, they're going to be upstairs, you're downstairs. They've got one channel on, you've got another channel on Netflix.
Yeah, but I thought you get 4, don't you?
You get 4
with the smaller plan.
No, you get one screen with the small plan, $5.99.
Oh.
Yeah, and there's a 2-screen one.
Yeah,
and then there's a 4-screen one.
And the 4-screen one is about £11 or something.
It's $13.99.
Oh, right. I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so that works out at £167.88 a year. So it's more expensive to have Netflix than it is to have all of the things that the BBC provide you with, including news channels and everything else that goes beyond, and to be able to have it on as many screens as you want in your house.
Yep. And on your phone, and the radio.
Yep. You can pause live TV.
Yep.
All of the live production stuff. We haven't even got into live production. I mean, look at the live production.
Purely because of the charter. I mean, that's part of the reason why the BBC is unbiased.
Yeah.
Allegedly unbiased. It is unbiased.
Yeah, and it does. The BBC in general is unbiased.
Yeah.
There are individuals that are biased people, and they do get pulled up on things. You know, when they're found, there is a standards committee, and it goes through it. And if they're found, then they're pulled from it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are a lot of people that get paid lots and lots of money. You know, they've cited Gary Lineker and others and so on and so forth.
Chris Evans is very highly paid, as I recall, and I still don't quite understand why that was.
Well, but there is obviously a reason that, you know, people obviously enjoy them. I mean, you know, doing those shows. So, yeah, from my point of view, I think maybe we could move to a monthly format. You know, maybe you could go to a split between digital only service. I don't know, but
really,
if something's not broken, why try and fix it?
I completely agree with that. It's not broken at all. Not even remotely broken. I mean, we pay Amazon. In your household, what services do you have? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm going to work out what I have now, and
right, okay.
I think I'm in the above the £1,000 a year mark, because we have Netflix.
Yep.
On the full screen job, we have obviously the TV license fee. We have Amazon Prime. We have Disney Plus. We have Apple TV. Okay. And we've got Discovery.
Oh, lordy. Well, I'll be honest with you.
And it's still cheaper than Sky. That is still cheaper. I've worked it out. It's still cheaper than Sky.
So we have obviously the BBC license fee, of course.
Yeah.
We have Netflix. We have Amazon Prime, and we have Disney Plus. I cannot, in all good conscience, have anything else. I can't. We had Now TV over Christmas for the purpose of Christmas to watch. And that as well. But we only had that to watch the Harry Potter special.
Yeah.
And the moment we finished watching it, I killed it. But I mean, I just worry. I just worry about us losing such a huge thing. Everyone seems to think it's going to end up like Channel 4. It'll have news, it'll have this, and it won't change. It'll just become a regular TV commercial service. But I don't think people, Channel 4 don't have radio stations.
Well,
Channel 4 don't have. I mean, they may have the biggest streaming service in the UK, but they don't have the stuff that the BBC has. They just do not do the sort of things that the BBC does. And to change that model, to change it implicitly, is a really, really bad idea.
Vicky McClure's got a new drama coming to the ITV network.
To the ITV network?
To the ITV network.
Whoa.
And
I like Vicky McClure.
And interestingly enough, the ITV network at one point used to be lots of little networks like, LWN and
beep, 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 beep.
Well, we saw the advert on YouTube for it. It came up as an advert on a YouTube video, and I was like, "Oh, this looks fantastic." Didn't know the BBC were doing adverts, and then Marie said, "Oh, it's going to be on ITV," and then it was like, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to bother. Then I'll wait till it's on the ITV player."
Oh, really?
And then I get less adverts.
No, but you see, I don't agree with that at all, because we've just almost finished watching It's a Sin, which is at Channel 4, which feels like it's a BBC show, but it's not. Because it's written by Russell T Davies, the man who basically brought back Doctor Who. And it's just this wonderful show. But we are bombarded by adverts, and you can't... It's not like I can wind through them, because we're watching it on all four.
Is it all four or more four? All four.
I think it's all four now, isn't it? More four is a channel. All four is the streaming service.
Okay.
And I'm probably wrong now, said that.
No, I think you're right.
But we can't get past the adverts at all. So you just have to wait. What we do is turn the sound down and actually have a conversation. Odd. It is like going back to the old days of watching TV, and it's there's a way of making the money, sticking adverts and everything on the BBC iPlayer. Oh, I see it all going wrong.
I don't like. I'm not a big fan. I mean, I've got very much into watching YouTube, and I'm almost at the point now of paying the premium service to get rid of the adverts.
Just to get rid of the 5, 4,
3.
Finger boys 2, 1. Skip ad.
Yeah, and because when you're on the big telly,
you're
on the 4K telly, it's so annoying because it disrupts the flow of the actual content.
Well, only because there's not a proper gap for when the advert goes in. That's what I don't like. It's just like, stop programming, here's the advert. Yeah.
It's obviously done by by some sort of computer.
It's not an algorithm, is it? That does
algorithm.
That? Do you think there are algorithms out there that companies look at that tells them when someone's worth buying?
I hope so, because they'll soon stop sending me stuff.
Well, I was just thinking that I wondered if Xbox started looking at Blizzard and just saw the price. Just thought, I think we need to buy them now.
Yes, on to the next one. Xbox buying Blizzard. Wow, that is
not just wow. It's more of a what the.
So, I've done a little research on this today because I knew you were going to talk about it. The Sony PlayStation price crashed today on the Japanese stock exchange.
Really?
Yeah, it took a real hit. So the effect has been immediate for Xbox, and that they were let's face it, in the run up to Christmas, PlayStation were outperforming Xbox sales and had won the battle for Christmas. So what a response from Microsoft. I mean, I was thinking about AMD and Intel and how AMD gave Intel a really good kicking over the last sort of like 12 months. They've really been hammering into them.
Yeah.
And now Intel's got the next layer of chips coming, and they just look phenomenal.
They're going to put the Ryzens out of business?
No, they won't put the Ryzens out of business in the way that you'd think. But I think that the way that AMD did their pitch, which was pretty good when they did it, was also based around their graphics architecture as well, doing well. And that's been hit badly by the chip shortage.
Yes.
And NVIDIA already had some seriously good, let's face it, and we're going to go down that rabbit hole in shortly. But
yeah,
NVIDIA is set up now with Omniverse, and it's almost like somebody asked me the other day, what's the best way to describe Omniverse? And I said, well, for me, it seems to be it's the display port for Metaverse, isn't it? It's yes. One of the display ports for Metaverse, and whether you're using Unreal Engine or one of the big games engines to build your content and launch it within, you're building it on NVIDIA architecture using RTX technology and the DLSS shader systems and all of the other cool little things that artists don't know anything about and don't have the pain anymore.
No.
Oh, you don't know you're born.
No, we don't.
So well, we do because we've been on the other side, Gary. We've been on the other side. Yeah. So I think we've seen it before. I mean, Microsoft once upon a time, they bought Rare.
Oh yes, I suppose they did, didn't they? I never really thought about that.
And so did Nintendo. They've all it goes in cycles, and they'll come back out the other side of it. And let's face it, Blizzard's not been in a good place financially. I don't know. They've not been in a great place, but they've got phenomenal titles.
Yes.
So they've got Call of Duty, and World of Warcraft and so on. So Yeah, it's an Overwatch, and Overwatch obviously is an esports type of game. So
Yeah.
I think that leads into the esports thing. And big news today in Sunderland. Well, this week in Sunderland, they've committed to building an esports centre in Sunderland.
Oh, really?
Yep. So
That's like so. Basically, it's a big screen computer gaming arena.
Yeah. So
that's good though, because they could be used for a lot more stuff than just the esports. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone's listening from Cineworld, now's your chance to kick into a new marketplace.
What, filling all their empty cinemas?
Yeah, fill them up with events. Get the events.
Actually, with some of the really bigger screens, because I mean, this is obviously this is an ongoing thing, isn't it? That I mean, they do say that in times of war, that's when technology basically makes its big leaps, and this pandemic has been sort of like the equivalent of a war. But in terms of all the changes that we've had to make, and that we've realised that so many of them are actually good ones. Even though people moan that you should be seeing a film in the cinema. I mean, I watched The Eternals. I didn't go to see it at the cinema because my children didn't want to go and see it. I just thought, well, I'm not. I don't want to go.
So you watched it on Disney Plus? Have you
watched it on Disney Plus? Yeah, last week. And
I had to watch it in 2 bites. I mean, that was a long film. That was a long film.
It was. There was one small section in the middle that I ended up watching on my phone. I'm not going to lie, but I can categorically say I think I would have disliked it in the cinema as much as I disliked it when I watched it.
Yeah, I thought the first half of the film was brilliant.
Yeah,
getting to know the characters.
Yeah,
was great. It took a very dark turn then, and it didn't feel like it felt like when they did Endgame in 2 parts. They did Endgame, and then they did before Endgame. They killed everybody.
Yeah, to me it felt a little bit like they were DCing the Marvel universe.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. So it just the DC stuff is darker.
Yeah,
it is.
It
doesn't come across as well because of it, I think sometimes. But it's when they do it well, DC, they do it really well. Man of Steel, I think, is a great movie. In fact, I would watch Man of Steel over Eternals any day of the week.
We recently revisited Man of Steel. A brilliant film.
It's a superb movie. It really, really is.
And not to mention the VFX in that film is eye-watering. There are some shots in there that you just. I mean, I had the same feeling actually when I watched Aquaman.
Yeah.
When you obviously as we're being in the industry, we know how bloody hard those simulations are going to be.
Yeah.
And the pain that they will have gone through to get them right, they looked amazing.
A lot of the underwater stuff, I mean, the fact that it was comped to make it look like it was underwater, but then you have these actual sim shots, the ones where you're actually on top, or near the top, or coming out of the top, or going back into the top, and that's all the stuff when you saw that. It's just like Manta Ray's ship, his little thing, and it's just the in and out of the water and all sort of stuff, and oh dear, just phenomenal amount of work. I mean, Houdini and Scanline must have been raking in money every single moment of that film.
Side effects of obviously the company behind Houdini.
Yes,
phenomenal. So this deal with Xbox buying Blizzard, it makes them the 3rd largest games company in the world.
So there's that is Nintendo.
Top 5 game companies: Nintendo, Ubisoft, Sony Interactive, Activision Blizzard, Epic Games. Those are the games companies in themselves. I think this makes them the 3rd largest. It
does now. If you look at how many the names that are taking up the place of number 3. Yeah. No, for me it's the £69.7 billion that billion.
So this will make them the 3rd largest games company by revenue. So you've got Tencent that's at the top. That's the Chinese company. Mm-hmm. Then you've got Sony, and then it'll be Microsoft, and then Apple. So that's some crazy stuff going on there.
It's mental, isn't it?
So all of these amazing VFX. We were talking about this in our preamble, weren't we? Before recording.
Yes.
Before recording. What are the minimum specs for a PC nowadays? We were having this conversation, weren't we?
Yes, we actually were. And it's I mean, it's interesting because obviously things have changed, and they were saying for years that you couldn't get rendering any quicker on a CPU, and then they sort of like just went, and then someone had the brainwave to, what if we use those GPU things? What if we use them? And because different amount of cores and all that sort of malarkey, and it has made things a lot faster. No word of a lie. It's made it just phenomenally quicker. So what we would consider to be a good setup for a PC now is so much different to how it was 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
I mean, 10 years ago, the difference in spec is phenomenally different. I mean, what would you think would be a minimum spec now, really? I mean, that's because if I can just go back as a qualifier to this, but if we look at what the minimum spec was for a copy of Maya Unlimited 8.5, I'm going back to version 8.5, which was 2007, I think. Yeah, about 2007 it was, because it was one after the year, I think, if you know what I mean. So obviously you need a 3-button mouse, you need an Ethernet card, you need at least 1024 meg of RAM. More is recommended, is what it says in brackets after this. But at least 1 gig of RAM, and it said, and a graphics card and display device capable of screen resolutions of at least 1280 by 1024. My screen is currently running at my single screen is currently running at, what is it, 2250 by something, and then it's the qualified operating systems, because at this point it was only on Windows as well. Was XP and XP Pro and Windows 203 Server. The 203 Server stuff was only qualified on an AMD Opteron. And
I remember the Opteron.
Yes.
They were good.
They were. But they were. That's the thing. You've got an Intel Xeon. It'll work on that. They didn't recommend the Pentium 4. And then the Opteron, the 32-bit Opteron. And there was nothing applicable in the Intel 64-bit ones for XP Pro SP2. So basically, your main stuff is basically an Intel Xeon or an AMD Opteron at 32 bits. And a little bit of the 64-bit stuff going on there as well. Now, so the workstations, the Hewlett-Packard workstation, a WX4400, the WX8400, or the 9400, the Dell Precision Workstation 670, 690, and 390, which to me is, I remember those awful grey boxes they were awful. The IMB Z Pro, and Fujitsu Siemens, which I still can't believe. And then you've also got so you've got the Dell Precision, the IBM TP60. So they're very, at the time they were all pretty good models, I suppose.
So,
and then it's the graphics cards which are the laugh.
Yeah, so I mean, current workstations, I think the current weapon of choice in the industry is HP Z4, which is an Intel Xeon platform.
Yeah.
And they'll be running A4000 or A5000 NVIDIA cards with 64 gig of RAM.
Yeah.
128 if you're feeling adventurous.
Well, you never know. You might need that other 64.
You might well need that other 64.
Yeah, it just suddenly will crop up.
We've just done a customer spotlight on Panoply. Panoply. Yeah. So Panoply have just come in and done a spotlight on what they were doing previous, which was they'd set their stuff up with gaming cards. Their studios tended to be gaming cards, and they were convinced to try the Ampere technology, moving into NVIDIA's premium graphics card. And there's a lot of reasons why, if you're doing serious graphics, you want to be using those cards instead of gaming cards. I mean, number one, they're built to run 24/7.
Yeah.
So they'll just run and run and run. They've got fewer moving parts in them, so they'll not blow up on you as gaming cards can do if they're stressed and overloaded.
Yes.
And then the memory that they've got on them, they've got more memory. So you've got 20 gig of RAM on a graphics card.
I know, it's insane. Which
does mean a lot when you're doing heavy computational stuff.
Absolutely.
Like Sims.
If you're throwing around, with a sim in particular.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go up to the 6,000 cards, obviously, then you're 48 gig of RAM, I think it is, on a 6,000. They're not cheap cards. They're not hobbyist cards. You know, they're not. But they're designed. You know, especially if you put them into a render box and stick Redshift across them. You know, these things are going to eat through your render pipeline and allow you to do more. That's the thing. So yeah, you know, we were talking about, you know, what are the specs that you need, and I suppose certainly when I was at Doncaster, the machines we put in had 64 gig of RAM in them.
So cost wise, to a person who wants to do this for a living, what you're talking really is round about minimum cost would be what? If you're building your own,
3,000.
No, really?
For the card or for the machine? For
the whole machine altogether.
Yeah, I think if you're wanting a proper machine that does the job properly,
minimum
2.5 to 3 grand, because we've got VAT. You've got VAT in there as well. So, yeah, that's gonna give you a system that's gonna be rocking.
And also probably last you for about 3 to 4 years.
3-4 years, yeah.
Yeah.
3-4 years. I mean, Nvidia's just done their refresh, so we've probably safe. You know, we've got the 3000 series out for the GeForce cards, and we've got the A series out now on the Quadros. So
yeah,
that looks pretty solid. The way that Omniverse is coming along and is being geared towards the RTX technology.
Yeah.
And obviously, any Blender users out there know that your RTX is your godsend for turn on your RTX, and away you go. And then you've got your DLSS shader systems as well that are coming in, and I think that's going to go into Blender in the next iterations as well. So it just means that you can do more things procedurally.
Yes,
That's the point of it. And
Absolutely.
I know that Blender are looking at 3.1 to have more support for procedural shaders and for procedural painting. That's something that's coming in. So if you're familiar with
resolution independent painting.
Well, if you're familiar with Substance, that's what Substance does, doesn't it? In Substance, you can layer up your shaders and create masks and things like that.
Yeah, I still haven't touched Substance.
Mastered it.
I just haven't. No, I haven't. Not about mastering it. I just have not been in a situation where I've needed to use it. And we've got licenses at work, but it's like, well, you know, I'm mostly doing stuff that is essentially procedural shaders, but in the old sense of the word. You know, animating and rendering and comping and.
Well, just on animating, I mean, there's a reason why you want to have, you know, a workstation graphics card rather than a games one, because when it comes to playback, you want to play back at 30 frames per second and not.
Yeah, well, this is the thing.
Stutter all the way through.
Stuttering. The project I was doing before Christmas was for company, and it had an object which was forming itself out of. I think the highest figure we actually had was, I think it was 18,000 and some odd. No, 180,000. No, 18,000 some odd silver balls, and each of these silver balls were rendered smooth at render time, but they still had to have a certain number of surface facets in order to look like a sphere on the surface of this object. And I did it on 2 of these objects, and it ran like a dog. And
not a fast dog, not a greyhound dog. No.
This was a Labrador.
This was a sausage dog. Sausage dog.
This is a Labrador after one very long walk and a very big meal. No, honestly, so it was running so horribly slow at one point, I actually put my head in my hands and just like stared at my palms, going, "Please, just play back." I was having to burn alembics and all sorts, basically, bringing the alembic in and then basically baking it all, and then
anybody that's over the age of 37, 38 may just remember when they had to go and make coffees when they set their PCs off to do things.
Do you know what? We still do it now. It's like anything, and this is me twittering on. But it's like you have a machine, it has so much more power. But what you're generating, it doesn't matter. It still takes 2.5 minutes to render. And it's kind of like, it was, you know, when the things that we were doing back in the day, you know, back in the 90s. And we were working on stuff like 95, 96. And I would be doing a render of, there was one particular, it was a Chips Ahoy commercial for America. For anyone who doesn't live in America. Chips Ahoy are cookies. And we had 2 huge boxes of them in the office. They did not last. I mean, like crates they were. And so we're doing these commercials. And it was an elephant that I'd built out of NURBS. And when we thought NURBS was the answer to everything. And it had a saxophone. And a guy called Kevin Rooney, who worked with us at the time, he animated it. And then another guy, I can't remember his name, did some of the lighting, and then we kicked off to render, and it still took 2.5 minutes a frame. So it wasn't even PAL. It was NTSC, which is a smaller format, and it was like 29.97 frames per second, which is NTSC. So we're working to an American format, and it was like, well, how long is it going to take? And it always worked out to 2.5 minutes. And anything that we ever rendered always was 2.5 minutes. And still now, it's still, if it renders and takes 2.5 minutes a frame, we're okay. Even though now we're not worried about doing it on our own machines, we're now remotely firing it off to render farms.
Well, yeah, I mean, laptop or desktop was the next and final sort of concluding topic, wasn't it?
It was indeed. And there is a very good reason for this that I asked this question. Firstly, primarily, it's obviously because, the laptops are obviously better than they were. I'm not saying they're better than desktops. They're better than they were. They've got better graphics cards in them than they ever had before. They've got better battery life. They've got much better screens. And as long as you've got a number pad on the side, you can probably get away with using any piece of 3D software on that laptop. But more is the point, and this has come out of how our worlds have changed in terms of how we do work. I am currently sitting in my house. I have been since before Christmas, because of Omicron. We all came home, but we've all been signing into our computers using secure networks and a piece of software called Teradici, which you know very well because you sell it.
We do.
Yes.
We do.
Now, I could work on my works computer, which has got the graphics card, and it has the power, and it has the storage, and it is got all the right software on it from my laptop, and I wouldn't notice any discernible difference from using it as if I was in the office. So why necessarily does one need a big desktop anymore at home when you can do it all on a laptop? At least that's my question.
Well, you shouldn't have a big machine at home, because if you've got a big machine at home and you're working on client data, you're working in a potentially unsafe environment for that data. So, depending on what protocols you've had put on the boxes and everything else. But
yes, there's firewalls and VPNs up the wazoo. You've got to be careful.
Yeah, but if someone broke into your house and stole that machine, there will be residual data on that machine somewhere. And the PCI IP system, which is basically send your screen from the office to either a zero client or a thin client. So a zero client is a box that's dedicated to accept only that screen, and a thin client is like your laptop, which has got an operating system on and then runs a bit of software that then accepts that accepts the signal into it. And then it takes that as that software is running, it has basically cloned the screen. And the underlying signals from your computer of the mouse movement and the keyboard input and everything else is being sent two-way, backwards and forwards, and that's the only data transfer that you get. So it's picture and input data that goes. So all of the sensitive data stays within your secure Fort Knox cloud.
Of course, yes.
That is.
Yeah.
So the answer for me is the only time you'd want a big rig at home is if you're playing games, and you're not allowed to play games on your computers at work.
But if I wasn't working and the stuff I was doing was on my own machine, I've got a NAS here as well, so it's not like I've got, a reason I'm not like I'm running out of storage space. I'm not even remotely running out of storage space. So there's no reason why I couldn't do my own stuff. But would I use a laptop? Could I use a laptop to do what I do over a desktop? Because I'm not even rendering really that much at home anymore.
If you're not rendering, you're still going to have an issue when it comes down to playback speed of animations.
Do you think?
Well, knowing some of your animations, yes.
I don't know what you're saying.
Sorry. They're quite big.
Some of them have been a bit massive, haven't they? Some of them have been absolutely horrendously big, yes.
They have.
Yeah.
But
it's why I intentionally keep all the stuff that I do for YouTube. I try and do it in much smaller stuff because I mentally immediately go, oh, I could show this and I could do that, and I think, yeah, but pare it back, Gary. Just stop it. Sorry.
I think for proof of concept and the early parts of projects, laptops are fantastic for doing a quick review of scene data. If you're not worried about the lag too much, yep, it's all good stuff. But I think if you're sitting there working day to day on a laptop, and if that laptop isn't up to military spec for the top graphics card, top processor, top RAM, super fast hard drive systems inside it, you're probably going to be looking at the best side of $2,500 anyway for that laptop. All for what? So that you can move it around, and it will probably weigh quite a bit. I mean, you're probably looking at 2 kilograms of weight just on the laptop, itself.
Maybe, he said, looking down at his.
Yeah.
Actually, I will be honest. When I bought my laptop, it was purely because I sometimes would find myself when I was freelancing going into offices that I'd never been into before, and I'd sit there and they would pay me for the first day, and I wouldn't do a thing because I would need this and I need that, and then I need to be put onto the network and put into the system and blah blah blah. And I was like, I can't do anything, and I do find that frustrating because I do love what I do for a living, and I like to be able to actually get involved as soon as possible and start doing stuff.
We've got a service. I don't want to be sounding like we're selling stuff here, but we've got a service that's called Sherpa, and that works as a front end for AWS systems. Yeah, so you can spin up a workstation, you can choose what type of graphics cards you want, you can spin up storage, and you can spin up render. So, for a weekly fee, you can actually have all of that power of a studio.
That's really good. That's really good.
So if you're a freelancer and you've got a project and it's paying, it's perfect for you. And that's what it's been built for. It's been built for the freelancer.
Okay, so this, as I said,
however, a lot of studios have ended up using it.
This is not a pitch, and this is not a sponsorship thing. So if I'm just inquiring just for my own benefit. So say I wanted a license of Maya with V-Ray, and access to an AWS render system as well. I could get that sorted out with the processor that I want, with the graphics card that I wanted. So I could actually work totally separately from everything. All the stuff stays there, but I dial in from home, and I work on that.
From anywhere. Dialing from anywhere.
And then I can just fire it off to a render farm at the same time.
Yeah. And if there are a few of you working together, it can be built into a network so that you're all connected to your storage.
You see, this is. I know technology is amazing. And it still staggers me what we're capable of doing, but this whole cloud thing, I think it's taken the world by storm. It completely has. It's become something which at first was kind of like, yeah, it's a nice place for me to store my pictures. I don't have to have any equipment in my house anymore. That's impressive stuff. That is impressive stuff. I'll be honest with you. Occasionally, I do get surprised by how impressive this stuff is. Even when you use it, obviously I don't use all that sort of system, but the fact that I am working in this world, I sometimes get a little bit mind blown by how it's come on.
Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get your mind blown, check out. I mean, we've got a video on our social pages and on our website that Ritzy Animation, they did a whole production in Sherpa in lockdown. So they talk about it and how it changed the way that they worked. And what it did is it gave them the flexibility to scale up and scale down.
Yeah.
As the production went through, and I think that's a lesson that everybody's sort of figured out through COVID, through this pandemic, is where before you were buying tin and you were building capacity into your studios for the bulge when it comes, because it always does come on a production. There's always going to be a bulge at some point. New and innovative ways have now been created for those bulges to be done virtually in cloud. And it means that the rapidity at which you can be set up and working and then scaling back makes the whole process a lot leaner for your production cycle. So, it's certainly definitely something, I think that we will see more and more of. It's not cheap.
No.
I won't begin to say it's cheap because it isn't, but it's value for money if you compare it, with what the alternatives are, which is buying a box, buying the software, renting a space, putting the, all of those bits and pieces in place, and then moving the artist in there.
Yeah.
That's where it sort of comes together. So
basically having everybody out of the office and using Sherpa.
Or in the office and using Sherpa, because then your because then your office is quiet. You've got no pollution from your big, beefy workstations. So you've got silence, not dissimilar to what Jellyfish did in Sheffield.
Yeah.
Jellyfish when they set the Sheffield office up, they made that almost silent because that was what Phil Dobry had got in his head of being, and all of their workstations work out of a data center, so they connect to a data center the same as Brixton connect to a data center. So 2 new offices came up, and all of the technology was in one data center. And I was raving about it. I was still at college when I was raving about it. I was like, this is the future, and that's what got me so interested in making classrooms fluid and making them these transient spaces where hardware is no longer bolted to a classroom door. It's like, if you go to E404, that's where the supercomputers are, and everybody's fighting to be in it, and you can only put 20 people in that room. And, we've got a class of 30. So what do we do? How do we expand E404? And I'm using 404 because it's obviously 404 not found, but that's for anybody that doesn't get the old internet joke there.
Well, people still use it on pages anyway.
I think they do, yeah.
Yeah, I think they do. Was there anything else? Any final words? Oh, yes, there was actually. I wanted not so much a final word, but and I would never normally do this because I don't want to use this as a way of promoting my YouTube channel. But I put up a comment thing asking, if anybody had any ideas or anything, if they wanted to, just say, what would they like me to do next, kind of thing. And I got a few replies and a few responses. And one of them was, I'm a beginner. I would love it if you did a course that was like how to use Blender from the very beginning. And I just thought to myself,
Are we not allowed to say donut?
I'm not mentioning that.
He has brought a new video out, though. He has brought a new video out for Blender 3.
Yes, how to make a donut in Blender 3. I know it's just ridiculous. Anyway, no, I've got a lot of time for Andrew Price. I'm not going to say why. But I just thought my thoughts were, if you want to learn how to use Blender, there are so many other people who have already done this.
Yeah.
And then so the thought came to my head was, well, maybe I should actually do a course on how to use Blender, but maybe a short one. And not a paid thing, just Can I
ask? I mean, I don't often ask for things. Well, I very rarely ever ask for things actually. Other than when are we meeting up for a beer? And we get put back every time.
Sooner, I think than later now.
I think, and I was talking to Chris McCall about this.
Name drop,
because he's going to be in one of these. Chris, get ready. Your invite is in the post, mate. He was asking. He was asking, when am I going to be on this podcast?
I do want to talk to this man. He's my kind of guy, as you were very aware.
So we were talking about the animation pipeline. He was talking to a lecturer at some place, and he asked him about it. And I'm probably butchering this, so he might rectify it when he's on. But they were saying, we teach them this and that and the other, and then they go and find their way. And he said, well, there is only one way of, putting the animation together in a pipeline.
Who, Chris said?
And and I think what he meant was there's a logical way of building an animation.
Yes.
And that's what he's talking about.
Yes.
Not there is a way of creating an animated feature or a short or a whatever else. But
it's very fluid, the pipeline is.
It can be fluid, but
yes.
When it comes to doing animation, it goes in one direction, yeah. And I think that there's an opportunity to do some sort of reference to the pipeline of the direction of flow and how you go through all the stages of asset.
Yeah.
From concept asset to practical asset within the animation itself to workable assets that can be then manipulated and animated, the animated sequences themselves as assets, the look dev assets, the lighting assets, and all the other little bits that go in to finally producing then the composited assets together into the final feature.
No, it's well worth doing, and I probably will do it, to be honest with you. But it's almost like literally now you've now given me another one that I need to do.
Well, I'm thinking that this could be a collaboration.
Oh, I see. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a collaboration in it.
I think
you heard it here first.
I think Chris could do the video himself. I've seen some of the stuff he's done, but very quickly, and then I will I will stop talking about the JetVFX YouTube channel, which you can find very easily on YouTube at youtube.com/channels/GENVFX. That's GENVFX. But I'm not promoting myself here, so I won't do that.
How many subscribers?
How many subscribers now? 1,134.
Drop the mic.
I'm staggered myself. It was the last video I did was doing about quick stylistic texturing in Blender 3 with UV Project and Critter, and so the point was that originally
I've watched it.
Sorry,
I have watched it.
Really long. They need to be shorter. It's true.
It is 5-minute chunks is what my students once said to me.
Yep. Well, I did a little post about that as well and said, what would you prefer? And the maximum they said was 15 minutes. And I think they're quite right. Anyway, I still watch tutorials that are like an hour long. And I'm sure you watch live feeds as well. So we haven't got a leg to stand on. Yeah. Exactly. So shush.
I watch Erindale for 5 hours.
It sends me to sleep. He's got such a lovely voice.
You're up there with him.
Face for radio. So this chap, a guy called Andrew Mossman, responded to the video. He said, thanks for this video. He said, this is the kind of content I've been looking for. There are a lot of videos out there that model in Blender and post-process in Photoshop. I've been interested in knowing if Critter, especially Critter 5.0, can replace Photoshop in a workflow. I use DaVinci Resolve, and I believe it to be quite better than Premiere. My question for you is, do you believe Critter is better than Photoshop? And what about for painting over 3D models specifically, and concept art? And if it was just those things I was using it for, concept art and painting over 3D models, I would say yes. I would say yes, Critter is better than Photoshop. But that is just in reference to those things, because Photoshop has so much in it.
It does.
And Critter also has so much in it. And they're kind of like different animals in a lot of respects. But I prefer...
I think Critter sort of like sits in the Sketchbook Pro realm.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
It's also got a feeling of a little bit of Corel Paint in there as well. But when it comes to flat out painting, I hate to say it, I don't ever want to use Photoshop again for just painting when I can use Critter. And the most recent release, version 5, it's just so fast. I mean, I do a swoop. I've done a swoop in this. I've done a swoop in Photoshop, and I know the speed my hand goes. There's my swoop. In Critter, it's a perfect arc. In Photoshop, it's got jaggies, and it's better. It's just better at painting. But it did make me think about, I'm going to do just a Critter one, just to talk about all the stuff that's actually in there. Again, other people have done it. But when people put it out to me like this, questions this, I don't want to say, look at this guy's video, do I? But I've been doing quite a bit of that.
Yeah, we have done that, and I have said that I think that there's, I think that these resources are ideal for the university and college students, and it doesn't matter whether you're using Maya, Max, whatever.
No, not at all. Not at all.
All of the principles are solid, so you can actually convert them yourself, and you should do. It's what we do when we're trying to work things out. If we know it in Maya, we reverse engineer it into another package.
And in fact, just recently, I have been. I had I think about an afternoon where I was just waiting for some feedback, and I opened up Bifrost in Maya for the first time properly. Never really looked at it, and if I had not spent quite a while recently with my head inside of geometry nodes in Blender, I wouldn't have found Bifrost intimidating because it's just a node network. But a lot of the stuff that you do in that, I mean, the first thing I did was following some chap who actually was one of the guys who was involved in the building of it, of Bifrost, about taking a polygon plane basically it's got an input, it's got an output. It's got a polygon plane, you drag it in, you then make that the input, and then you sort of add a noise deformer, and then you move it along by sticking an add, which then you connect a vector to, which you then plug as inputs into the... it's literally geometry nodes. To such an extent that I just thought, wow, this is blowing my mind that I understand this. And if I hadn't spent that time on this, I wouldn't have done. So everything runs backwards and forwards across each software. It's like Houdini is very similar as well. And there's so much stuff going on.
As you brought up Houdini, and again, seeing as we've plugged Gen VFX, rightly so as well, we've plugged Gen VFX. I'm gonna give a plug. We always tend to give a plug to YouTube channels and whatever else
we do a bit.
But I want to give a plug to a VFX school, which is Rebelway, and they have a YouTube channel. And there's a Star Destroyer ice destruction that's just dropped into my inbox, done in Houdini as a tutorial.
I think I've seen it. Is it
coming, no word of a lie.
Is it coming up to
no
the
word. Yes, absolutely. No word of a lie. I was like, drop the phone. This is another level.
Yeah.
And if you're into VFX, if you're into sort of this sort of thing, then you'll fully appreciate what they've managed to do. It's a 2-hour video, but pulling that together, it's
2 hours 8 minutes and 21 seconds actually.
Most of that is actually complimenting Gen VFX's channel at the beginning. But,
it's lovely. It's the whole, but it's not just. But the
it's not just a sim.
It's not
They've done
just
the whole
sim.
thing.
It's everything. It's like the compositing layers as well. And I think it's a lot.
Everything's in there.
One of the biggest things that I think everybody, when people do anything like this, they seem to forget. I think sometimes how much of it is done after the rendering, and it's not taken into account. There's so much VFX work. It involves just Nuke, or a little bit of After Effects, and just Nuke, and nothing else. You just get your live action footage, and the rest of it is all Nuke. And then, but when you actually see someone who's done, a complete breakdown of how they've generated it all and how they've put it all together, and you think, how many layers is that? That's probably about right. There's about 8 layers altogether, and then sugar-loaded amounts of stuff.
They've got an advanced compositing for VFX video just a bit further down the stack, and that's 4 hours long. So there's a wealth of stuff on Rebelway, and obviously if you're that way inclined and you need to sign up and you're looking for an online school, this one looks pretty good right now.
Absolutely.
So,
no, they're
Side
nailing
Effects
it.
Pretty happy with them.
I'm not talking about my stuff in any way or form, but there is so much good reference and good stuff out there. So much. It's there's a wealth of it. Speaking about Chris, as you were a few minutes ago, so is our intention? Let's put this out there. Is our intention to have him on the next one?
Yes, it is. Before he gets busy, because he's got a project that he can't talk about, but he may talk about, but he can't talk about.
Well, but this is the problem with when you work in the industry. There's always something that you can't talk about.
But it sounds very exciting, and if it does come off, then it would create a whole load of new opportunities for people to get on in the job and get in the world.
Absolutely.
So we will get Chris McCall on. He's up for doing it, which is unlike most people when we ask him.
David Stirzaker, we're talking about you.
And I think he just gets off now. This David, he gets off on just hearing his name dropped every time.
No, I think David's sick to death of hearing me talking about this. I'll see him again soon because we're all back at the office. Anyway.
It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's always a pleasure, mate.
But we did get through some bits there, some topical bits.
I might even be able to get it back to just around about an hour, but probably not.
Yeah. Well, there was a load of stuff at the beginning you're not going to put in.
You're not wrong. 5-minute chunks. 5-minute chunks. Does that mean I've got to vomit every 5 minutes?
I was going to say that sounds like a Saturday night mantra.
5-minute chunks. More beer. Oh God, I haven't been out for a good session of beers in a pub for a long time.
But we do have some plans for the 2022 year.
Yep.
Work permitting.
Yes.
And we do want to try and get some projects off the ground as well. We did talk about them last year.
Yep.
They got absolutely sidelined by all the events that went on.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll look to do that, and we want to create a student academy of some sort to work on those projects, which would be awesome.
It would be good. It would be good.
So if any lecturers out there that want to get involved, there will be work on both sides. This is not a one-way pony.
Not at all. And more than anything, I think what both myself and John have both talked about this on more than one occasion, is we would very much like there to be a much stronger, constant link between education and work. I think that's one of the big things for us. Doesn't matter.
And I think
we're not talking about software. Like, oh, it's got to be on this. We just mean we want there to be people who are going from the colleges to the workplaces, and from the workplaces to the colleges, so that the people who are working get the right people from the college, and the people who are at college get the right information from the people who work.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're saying.
Yeah.
And some of it, I think, will come down to specific targeted stuff that we'll do with CPD, and then we'll bring those people onto the podcast.
Yeah.
So that they can talk about, what they've got out of those sort of things, and where they see how that can develop. It's something I think that will build this channel properly, because lecturers are grafters as well. They work bloody hard.
They do
for very little money, and I can say that
that's
now I'm
also
not in the industry.
That's also the same in the industry. You work very long hours and you don't make a lot of money.
It is.
It's not a highly paid job, but it's an absolute joy to be in this industry. It's such a rewarding job if you just can live with the fact that you are going to, at certain periods of your life, not have much of a life without putting people off.
One of the best things is when you do an IMDb on yourself, and you find yourself on there. So, Chris, this is a shout out to you. We'll see you soon on the podcast.
We're coming for you, McCall. We're coming for you. We heard you're a man with a certain set of skills.
Very good.
I try.
Very good. It's going to be a fun edit, this one.
And he wasn't kidding. I have been editing this for about 4.5 hours. Yeah. Just let I drop this in. Anyway, turn it on. Yes, I think. No, it's all staying in. I'm just gonna do. This is for the Patreon's page. They get the full version. And on that note,
on that bombshell,
we shall say it's a good night from him
and a good night from me.
And thank you all for tuning in. See you later. Bye.
Good night.
This work is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 4.0 International License. Any opinions stated during the course of this podcast belong purely to myself and to John, and are based at the time that we record this. The theme music is My Everything by DJ Quads. If you like that, and I'm sure you probably did, there is a lot more of his great stuff which you can find at soundcloud.com/DJ Quads, or his music is also promoted by www.free-stock-music.com.